Faigie. I am so happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
It's been in the works for you and I to connect, and I am so honored to have you here.
I am honored to be here.
Wonderful. Well, the topic of the month right now is happy mind, and I really believe that when I do any artwork or anything creative, it truly elevates my state of mind. So perhaps we start with your journey. Tell us, how did you arrive in this space?
Okay, so I started out my career as an early childhood teacher. I got a degree in early childhood education from a place called Bank Street College of Education in Manhattan, New York City. If anybody has heard of that, it's a well-known graduate school for education. And I was teaching, and I was an early childhood teacher, and then I became an early childhood director, and then I got married and I started my family. I have a nice sized family. I have 6 children. And my last child is getting married in November, actually. And so I stopped to raise my children, but I still wanted to do something on the side. So I always loved photography. So I became a photographer. I became a high-end portrait photographer. And the way you learn in that field is you just go study by different photographers. But I was having kids, and I was dragging kids with me to different photographers, to conferences and stuff, to learn about it. And I set up in my dining room with the background, and so I did that for a while. But also on the side, I was doing I had gotten very interested in internet marketing at the time. It was a while ago, so which it was pretty new at the time. And I wanted to get involved within it. And they say, like, when you just the way they teach you, when you write about what you know. So they said, if you want to create some kind of product, create something that you know. And what did I know? I knew early childhood. And I particularly always loved the art part of the early childhood. I was very into creative art. The graduate school that I went to is very against like these crafts and these copycat crafts, cookie cutter crafts, very into just like creative art, and just loved watching kids do creative art. So I started a blog. I started a blog for on kids art, but I've taken like a lot of different courses. I'm one of these like shiny object chasers in courses. So I took a course with this fellow who said to me, well, you can't really have your blog if you're not really doing art. You can't just like be an armchair, art teacher. So I started pulling in neighbors' kids and doing art with them and posting. And then I was speaking to a friend of mine who was becoming a principal of a new private school in my area. And it was only 1 year, and they only had like under first grade. And I was talking to her one day, and I said, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to be your art teacher next year. We were good friends, and we had gone to graduate school together, and we knew we had the same philosophy. So she said, great. So I became an art teacher, and then I had content to post onto my blog. And I was doing that for a while, and I changed. I started doing a more progressive, very interesting type of an art after a few years, where it's like choice based. And in the interim, what happened was I was taking another course where I was trying to figure out how to market my blog. And I was explaining to one of the coaches, I was explaining to her how the reason most people don't feel artistic when they're older is because of their early experiences. Like they did these crafts that didn't let them express themselves and didn't let them really think and solve problems. So they just kind of started thinking that they weren't artistic. And she said to me, well, would you consider starting a blog for adults on adult creativity? And trying to explain to them why they feel they're not artistic, and to bring them back. And then maybe they can go back and try to get, interested in what you have for kids. And I said, sure, I'm open to that. And I started doing research, and I started coming across this thing called mixed media art, mixed media. And everything I did research was come mixed media. And I was like fascinated. And I started Googling it and started taking books out of the library. And then I started buying books. And I was like hooked on it. And so I started a blog. I started a blog for adults. And so that was like, I did courses, made courses, and I started teaching like in person locally and doing courses. And it became like a whole passion of mine. And even though on the side I do twice a week, I still teach art in this local elementary school. And then I took another course. No, not another course. I got into this coaching I joined this coaching with this woman who she coaches artists, and I wanted her to help me. I wanted her to help me figure out where to go with teaching the adults art. Instead, she dug deep into my past and my journey, and she highly suggested that I shelve that because I wasn't really an artist. I was just somebody helping other people become artists, and I go back to my roots and try to teach teachers on how to how to give kids art that's developmentally appropriate and creative. Because I forgot to say that one of the things I was doing when I was raising my children, I also was giving workshops. I was giving workshops to teachers in schools and early childhood centers. So I realized after speaking to this coach that I could package that and bring it out online, because I used to only do these local. And now I said, hey, I can teach schools all over the world who are interested in learning this. So I put together this program called Beyond Copycat Crafts. And that's what I'm still teaching. And I'm trying to put together this, trying to teach teachers and directors and parents why it's so important to do creative art and what it does for them. And that's where I am.
Now, you mentioned before we hit record that there was a pivot recently. Is that the pivot you were describing?
Yeah. That was the pivot, because it was for the last number of years I was so focused on working with adults that I hadn't really focused on teaching teachers. And there was all of a sudden, it was like I made a hard stop and turn and went back to my, I kind of put together all my knowledge from this, and took some, I created, slide presentations and PDFs, and I made this whole, I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes. It's, Edu Art for Kids dash Beyond. So it's just this program that teaches. It's really mostly for directors to show the teachers, but of course, if anybody, is interested in it, if they're a teacher or a parent who wants to learn this, that's, available for them also.
And one of the things I find fascinating about this is that often, whether it be teachers or non-artistic people, we often do find someone who is able to do creative work kind of intimidating. Even, I personally have always loved artwork, but I can imagine if you're at a certain age and suddenly you're like, I'd like to try it, you are maybe
Right.
a little bit intimidated.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. That's why I loved mixed media, because mixed media is not like you learn how to write. Like I find, like it becomes like a cutoff point with kids. Like I find in the 5th and 6th grade area, like they start realizing that if they can't draw realistically, they say they're not an artist. And anybody can learn how to draw. It's like, I remember many years ago, I had a painter in my house who was from the Ukraine, actually. And he was telling us I had one of my kids' rooms, we had like a whole space scene, and he sent his assistant in there, and in his broken English, he explained to us that growing up, art was a subject like math and science was, and everybody learned to draw. And it is hard work. It is hard work. So you have to be willing to, but it's not just like, nobody expects everyone to be a Mozart and to be able to sit down and bang out a piece, but they only think that you can know how to draw if you're born like it, and it's not true. There are definitely people that are more artistic than others. So a mixed media is very, very relaxing. It's paint, it's stamping and painting and collaging and making messes and experimenting, and it's very, very freeing and very, very freeing and very, very healthy, very relaxing. I've read a number in my research about creativity. I read so many books on how much better art is for you than therapy, even how it's been proven that it works, what it does for people, for their mental health, for their well-being. It's really it's just an amazing thing. I mean, if you have children, you can start with children, and it's always good to give them, the younger they are, what's called process art, which means that it's just the process that's important. It's not the product when they're very young, and then they'll make it into some kind of product themselves. So that's for younger kids. But then for adults, people who want to do mixed media, they should look into that, because that is an amazing, and it's huge. It's mostly women. I would say 99.9% women. This one guy I know, he's part of my coaching group. Actually, he does something called gel printing, Drew Steinbrecher or something like that. But it's mostly women that are interested in this and that are involved with this. And there's, these people on Instagram who do it, have huge followings, and it's a great outlet, great hobby.
Now, my sorry, I have a little bit of a cough.
Mm-hmm.
My background includes art and art history, and I do recall doing mixed media. It's like I could take color pencil with watercolor and mix it with maybe acrylic. Is that what you?
Yeah. Mixed media is when you mix media. But it's also, I'm sure there are mixed media that things are more realistic, but it's supposed to be like playing. It's like, really, a lot of it is like playing and learning materials, like stuff that you don't get when you're a kid. Like a lot of people who don't get to play when they're a kid, because really what you should be doing with very young children is giving them experiences with all these media. And once they have all these experiences, that kind of allows them to learn how to use them and actually, do higher level things as they get older, if they're allowed to do it.
Well, I find it so, again, exciting because my little boy, when he was younger, we have an easel in the backyard, and we had little watercolors with a big chunky um, paints. And I recall that he would do things, and maybe I'll even send you pictures and videos after our call. He would have no inhibition, and literally he would look at something like my mother-in-law's Coca-Cola collection, and he'd come up with these abstract colors that, if you look carefully, look like Coca-Cola bottles, but they were beautiful.
Wow. How old was he when he did that?
And so what I find that exciting about this topic for you and I is, one of the things that we often look for in a state of joy and feeling euphoria is the fact that we enter a place where we don't feel inhibitions. We are allowing ourselves to be in flow. And
Right.
sometimes we lose that as adults. And what I would love for you to share is, have any examples of people you've really seen blossom as an adult?
Okay, so it's interesting. So I have this. Okay, so when I started in my neighborhood, I started this small mixed media class, and I was trying to talk somebody in my school, one of the secretaries, into joining. So we do it in art journals. So you have it in an art journal. That way your stuff is there and you could look through it. There's not like random pieces floating around that end up getting thrown out. So I brought my art journal to show her. And it wasn't a good time for her. But when I walked out, I met an old friend that I hadn't seen in a long time. And I said to her, "Oh, hi, you interested in joining a mixed media art class?" She says, me? Not artistic. My mother was a sculptress. I said, 1 minute. I opened the book. I looked through. She looked through. She says, "Hey, you know what? I can do this. You know what? It's a good time in my life. I'm going to join." So she joined, and she was part of the group for a few years. And last year, she moved out of the country. And she was so empowered by what she had done there that she started taking like acrylic painting. Like she became a real artist because she felt empowered, and she was given the space, and she was given the opportunity to just be and create and have fun. And it was an amazing thing. It was an amazing thing what it did for her. She's taking classes, and she has this wonderful hobby now that she's.
I love that story. I love how that brought some confidence in someone who thought that's not me. And you know
Right.
what's interesting also, you early on you mentioned that in some cultures, like you said, maybe even European cultures, art is part of the curriculum, and the process is important as opposed to the product.
Well, the process went well. In what I meant European. Okay, so there's two different things. There's learning how to draw, and then there's the process art. Like kids that are 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 shouldn't be told we are going to make this. They should just be allowed to experiment and to play and make messes. As they get older, if they're ready, then they can learn how to draw. But I really, what my point was, I wasn't really trying to say, because I don't really know exactly how it was done. What I was really trying to say with that story is that anyone can learn to draw. It's not only the artistic. There's definitely going to be some that are better, the same way that some are better at math and science, right? But, that was my point. It was that anybody could learn to draw. And, but so there's a lot of different parts of art. There's the process only art, and there's learning skills, and it has to be given to kids as they grow what they need for their developmental stage at those times. That's really important.
It is, yes. And I imagine if as an adult you are learning to draw and you may not have had that skill set at all, you're creating new neural pathways in
For
the
sure.
right.
For sure. I actually read a book. I think it was called Painting Your Way Out of Your Diana Barry was her name. I think it's Paint Your Way Out of the Corner. I don't remember exactly. Painting Your Way Out of Your Corner. But she talked about how when you do like improvisation art or any other kind of improvisation, it literally creates new neural pathways in your brain. You can rewire your brain. It's fascinating.
I took up ukulele playing not too long ago, and I really did feel joy, a sense of joy when I would do it. I'm not at all great at it, but but I
But you
enjoy it.
enjoy it. It gives you joy. That's, you don't have to art and music. You don't have to be great at it to give you joy. You just have to do it. It doesn't, there's a very in the world, in our society, perfectionism is very very big, and it becomes only worthwhile if you can do it well. It's not fair. It's almost like sometimes I feel like the art has been robbed from the non-artists. It's like it's not fair. Even though I'm not this great artist, I want to be able to do art, and I want to play with paints and pastels and watercolors and stuff like that.
Just listening to your story, though, I feel like you are an artist because just imagine the path you have laid. And if you reflect on your life, I'm hearing you say things like you set up workshops, you on your own understood how to work with your children and come up with creative projects. So your entire life has been done about creativity.
Right. But the problem is that people think you're an artist if you can draw realistically. It's crazy. Of course, yes, I know that I am in a certain way an artist, but that's what people have in mind, right? So I see that portrait behind you, right? That would be an artist who did that, right?
Yeah, that's an original, but it's a vintage poster. I love the idea though that you brought up perfectionism, and I know that many of us, especially in modern day society, we feel like we have to hold ourselves to certain standards, and then because of social media, it's easy to compare.
Right.
However, many parts of our lives are a form of art. So writing, blogging,
Cooking.
cooking. And the thing is, one of my favorite lines from I can't remember the name of the film at the moment, but see, I love to cook. And there's a line from that movie, it's a Disney movie, and they say anyone can cook. Or there's another line that said anyone that if you enjoy food, you will come up with a way to enjoy cooking. So same goes with art. Same goes if you enjoy articulating and writing, you'll come up with a way to become an effective writer.
Right.
So, and that goes back to this concept of happy mind. Maybe you can share your experiences with happiness when it comes to art.
It's not just my experience. It's talking to so many people who talk about the flow state, being in art and what it does to them. Just being able to get into the zone, and how if you have anxiety or if you have depression, and how you just, when you get into working with your hands, see, it's not just the art itself. There's a book that I read that was written by two doctors, a husband and wife team doctors. And I don't remember the creative healing or something like that, but they talk about handwork and the importance of handwork, even gardening, and working with your hands really makes you happier. It really helps all what ails you, and creativity together with it. It's really like a medicine. And people who don't have a hobby and do feel like they need to be a little bit happy, you should really do a little research. Google mixed media. There's a lot of free things, there's paid things, there's books. I started by getting books out of the library and buying books. It's a whole world out there. I just think that, unless somebody really, really wants to learn how to draw, let's say you want to really learn how to draw, there's a program. There's a famous book by Betty Edwards, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. So there are all kinds of courses given, and that is really amazing. She has an amazing method for teaching people how to draw. And I've done some of the exercises. It's very, very interesting. So if somebody really wants to learn how to draw, they should look up Betty Edwards. And if somebody really wants to just like get into creativity and have a hobby, they really should just start Googling mixed media. They'll just, it'll be like going down a rabbit hole.
And I love how you mentioned the fact that the tactile part of engaging in any form of art, whether it's cooking, gardening, or art, does have an effect on our brain. And going back to like the more spiritual sides of movement, knowing that we have all these senses and meridians that then connect to our brain, knowing that that tactile connection really does affect our brain. I know when I garden, I get really happy.
Oh yeah. Gardening is definitely one of those for sure. But I never garden, but I know people very often. It's like a lot of times the people that are into creative art are also into gardening.
Now, can you share maybe those that are listening to you, if they're interested to learn from you, what kind of approach would you use for someone who is perhaps seeking a way to start something that they've never done most of their lives, which is art?
So I'll tell you what's interesting. So when I was still in the adult education, the adult art, I actually had put together a free mini course. Of course, that led one thing led to another, but I'm not really doing that anymore. But it's still there. It's still up. If anybody's interested in going to getting this, you would find it at Creativity Reignited. It's right on the thing. It's this free mini course, and it really helps open people up to that. That's for people that's adults, and then there's the people that are who are interested in working with kids. I know that's not, that's really my program really is more for like directors, principals, people in that kind of in that world. But on the other case, if anybody wants to really just try and dip their toes in, they're welcome to go get my free mini course on creativity reignited. That's that would really get people started.
Well, that's wonderful. I do hope I can have you back in the future because really enjoy artwork. And for those who are listening to this podcast, you may notice that we talk about artwork, but you're not seeing the lovely paintings behind.
That's just
So this will be on YouTube where you can see this.
let me show you. Let me show you a classic mixed media type of a piece. 1 minute. Let me pull this off here. See, this is like a wonky. It's like painted on the back. It's like there are pieces of newspaper pasted on top, and then there's like painting on top of the newspaper. Then I had painted and colored in pieces of paper. So then I cut these up to make houses. And then there are stamps that I made. Those are for the trees. So this is like a really classic, mixed media piece. That's just a lot of fun and very satisfying.
That is beautiful. Again, those who are listening, please look at the YouTube version so you can see her beautiful artwork. And the mixed media example was gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
And I hope to have you back.
Thank you. And I really hope people, use this. You want to be happier? Go do some art.
Absolutely. Be happy by doing artwork.
Right.
Thank you. And I hope to have you back.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.